Three Americans, two political parties, talking about one terminal diagnosis. This is political malpractice. Welcome back to Political Malpractice. I am here with my wonderful co-host, Chris Barrett, and Sander is still in California. There were issues with his fireworks because of the rain. So Chris has asked his friend Kevin, who is being so kind to grace us with his presence so that we actually have some controversy. According to last week's podcast, it's kind of boring when Chris and I agree on 90% of the topics. So hopefully we'll be able to throw a monkey wrench in our liberal and conservative friendship that we have forged here on our podcast. Kevin, welcome. Thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about you.
All right, thank you for having me. Shocker for those listening, I'm from New York, born and raised in central New York, Mohawk Valley, central area. If you find out where that is, you'll see a lot of cows and Amish. So shocker to some. I have a little bit of a journey. I was once very much on the left during the social justice warrior days. These days, where I stand politically is I am a conservative. I do acknowledge I have some libertarian leanings, and I also identify as an American nationalist. So, monkey wrenches thrown. No. So yeah, I'm glad. I am thrilled to be able to add this perspective to this conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Clarify for those of us listening, because right now we get Christian nationalist thrown around in the media a lot, which is synonymous with, neo-Nazi reborn stuff. How are you different than them as an American nationalist?
So American nationalists, for me, it's very at the core, it's America first. Meaning I believe at my core putting Americans first above all and else. Anything that happens in the world, which we're going to touch on tonight, the best way to convince me or to persuade me to possibly reconsider an issue is whether or not it benefits or hurts America. Meaning, like I said, America, benefiting America is at the top. It's the top tier. It's the ultimate goal. And I stress that in every aspect. So that's basically how, for me, I identify as an American nationalist.
So you're not like pro-European descent. It's just leave out the MAGA part, but it is focus on America.
So this aggravates both the left and the right, individuals on the left and the right. I don't see any purpose in having pride in your race specifically. I didn't choose to be born white. That just happened to be what God designed. So I personally see taking pride in what you've worked for, what you've accomplished. So that's honestly what I prefer. So when it comes to like pride in race, whether it's white or black or whatever, right? I see it all as idiotic, and I see it as narcissistic because it's pride in identity, not something earned, not something worked for. So that's, I don't play with that pride in race crap.
Okay.
Yeah, and I really think that's how why Kevin and I, when we get together and make our secret plans, I think it's that America first thing that sort of, we have differences of opinion on exactly what that means, but yeah, I think that's kind of where we both come from as far as overall political views.
I just want to make sure that any of our left listeners don't think that I have completely blown a gasket. And that they didn't hear American nationalist and immediately turn off their ears. Like, no, folks, I would not write.
Yeah, because that is like very different than a Christian nationalist. A Christian nationalist is a freaking fascist, really. And but I mean, at least taken to the extreme. I mean, there might be some people who have certain ideas about, oh, maybe we should bring prayer in school or whatever, even though I'm against that. At the same time, I think that, putting America first, not being ashamed of America, acknowledging that America has done bad things in the past, for sure, but generally believing in the overall mission, if you will, of the
Yeah.
country.
So Sasha, I want to say quick, because I actually intentionally started using American nationalist for that reason. I feel like people really don't. The word nationalist got this, this stank on it that just got, with white nationalism specifically, right? A nationalism based on race, that's disgusting. Christian nationalism, I've had some interest. I actually know some people that identify as Christian nationalists, and I've had some really great conversations with them. But yeah, nationalism based on race, that is disgusting. But nationalism in and of itself, at the end of the day, is about putting your country first. It is about pride in your country, at least the core values of your country. Does that mean your country is perfect? That's another thing. Don't confuse that with thinking that someone necessarily thinks that their nation is perfect, has never made mistakes at all. No, it just means that as an American nationalist, I believe that the founding principles and the core values of America, at the end of the day, when all said and done compared to other nations, is superior at the end of the day. And I believe that of Americans in general, I put all Americans first. Really, at the end of the day. Now I'm generalizing there too, because that can go to an extreme, which I figure I'll just let us get into the Venezuela conversation.
I was going to say, y'all just like kind of open the door wide for that part of the conversation to come in. So I hear you both talking America first, America first, America first. How are you squaring away at this point what amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on bombing the drug boats, bombing that dock in Venezuela, now bombing Caracas, stealing and or arresting, however you want to view it, we'll talk about that too, the president of a sovereign nation? How do you justify spending that kind of money when we have students here in America who can't even eat lunch at a school?
Do you want to take that first, Chris?
Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, no. Let's go with Kevin first. I think
Let's dive right into that. Right. Okay.
Because I'll give my opinion, but I think that will be the good one to.
All right. So
base with.
To come down to it, as I said, everything I look at it from the perspective of benefiting America. Now, to me, what I look at this situation with Venezuela is we're looking at a man who had increasingly close relationships, lovey-dovey relationships with China and Russia and Iran, many of our enemies, right? The oil is power. Like it or not, oil is power throughout the world. It builds and it destroys economies at the end of the day. So looking at it from an America First perspective, we make an agreement where we have better access to oil, right? We end up with a government that is more friendly to America than it is to Russia, China, and Iran. I consider that America first, and I'm fine with that. Now, I want to get into the details. I'm just generalizing there. I'm just going over a general explanation as to how someone can look at this and see it as America first. And ultimately, that profit from the oil, that profit from a more friendly relationship with Venezuela would bring in profit. That could be incredibly profitable at the end of the day.
Though, Kevin, because I'm not an oil tycoon. I'm a nurse. I'm in school to be a lawyer. So for who? I know Chris isn't an oil tycoon. So who's going to benefit?
So that is the interesting thing where we're talking about who and how. So that's why I say there's potential benefits, right? Ultimately, I think us having access to resources that our enemies don't, I think our entire nation benefits from that, first of all.
But how is what I'm asking, the how.
How?
I've heard potential. There's potential benefit. I've heard you say that we benefit. But how? There's 30 million children in the US who go hungry during the day, and they can't concentrate in school because they're hungry. And instead, we wage an unsanctioned illegal war. So where's the benefit?
I know we can get on the topic of necessarily it being war and stuff later, but I'd say what the benefit is, first of all, in profit, with oil being profit, and how that impacts the economy with, first of all, if we really benefit that. Now, like I said, this depends how the government uses it. profits from the oil invested in America can be invested in manufacturing, which will create jobs. Obviously, you're looking then at prices going down because really gas impacts the economy in so many ways. I mean, the trucks, if the companies have to pay more to fuel their trucks, then that, goes right down to the consumers at the end of the day. That's how the companies really compensate for that. So when you're looking at that, you're looking at the workers' potential. And like I said, this does depend, like all theories, all ideas of how things could work, depends on a number of factors, right?
I can see the potential, right?
Yeah.
If we had honest, trustworthy leadership, both in the president and in the Congress, then I could see, sure, doing something that's otherwise illegal, according to NATO and the ICC, I could see how we could take that money and then fuel it back in, right? But that's more socialist than it is oligarchist. We're going to make up a word here because this administration right now is an authoritarian oligarchy. It's not what America is, at least in the Democratic view, right? If there was a clear, yes, we're going to get all this oil because it's supposedly ours, which it's not, but it's supposedly ours. And it's going to drive down the cost of gas. And then that's going to help the economy. Truckers are going to be able to drive things across the country more. Ergo, by a domino effect, the cost of goods are going to go down. People are going to spend more. And here we're going to have this cycle into our economy. I can see that as a theoretic possibility. This isn't the first war America has fought for oil. Bush did it with Iraq. And during the Iraq war, the cost of gas went up. So there was no benefit to lowering the cost for Americans. I just don't see the theoretical possibilities ever becoming close to a reality.
And well, to be honest, and it's not a deflection, but it's kind of like, for example, for me as a conservative, I look a lot of what's pushed by the liberals, what's pushed by the left, and I see a lot of theories. But like, for example, democratic socialism, right? Socialism has never been done right here and there. And when they point to countries as democratic socialism, having known people from those countries, they're like, no, don't call us socialists. It's in any fashion. They just have large, welfare programs, and some certain welfare programs. But they're still like, don't call us socialists. This is at the end of the day where I think both sides deal with that, right? This idea of a lot of things are theoretical. Now, to me, when I look at this, like I said, a lot of factors do have to come into play here. When it comes to the oil, personally, I do think that regardless this situation, Maduro being removed benefits, first of all, him not being in power benefits America right off the bat. I genuinely do believe that. Where that goes, well, you were looking at the close relationship with China, the close relationship with Russia. And
relationship with Russia.
I know. Well, here's
the thing. Our president worships the ground this man walks on. I don't care.
This I'd be like, well, prove that literally where Trump has gotten down and worshipped the ground that Putin has, walked on. And, it's also interesting, though, because at the end of the day, it's like, for example, when I talk to people, there is no flawless individual on this earth, right? And let me explain this right now, because when I looked at Kamala Harris, I saw a woman who didn't reflect a single value I had as an American. I'm unapologetically pro-life. I don't believe in the transitioning of children. I actually don't support trans ideology at all. I believe, and like I said, the pro-life thing for me is a big one. And when I looked for freedom of speech, I didn't see a woman that would die for free speech. Like I looked and I didn't see a woman who would fight tooth and nail for my right to say what I wanted. On the right that exists.
Well,
Not perfectly. All right. Okay.
Sorry. You need to comment on that. You gave a lot of good points. So we're going to put a pin. There was something you said that I wanted to put a pin in. I'll remember it later. Okay. But you talk about somebody who's being willing to die for free speech, right?
Yeah.
It was your pro-life. I want to put a pin in that. We're going to go back to that.
All right.
It's not on the agenda. We're going there. But you talk about, you see a woman who's not willing to die for free speech, yet you voted for a man who, within his first week as president, signed an executive order that completely stomped on free speech. He called
Explain that.
So Trump signed an executive order
Okay.
that basically said you cannot say anything that could be perceived as anti-Semitic in his attempt to try to stamp out any pro-Palestinian speech.
Can you explain where that's been applied? Has someone been arrested under that and in prison?
It's been applied at several universities.
Okay. Universities are federally funded. No, okay. I get what you're going. That's federal funded. Where has an American citizen standing on the street, and trust me, there are plenty right now in New York City, expressing anti-Semitic views, where have they been arrested by the Trump administration or spending time in prison? Because I want clarification. You're talking about government funded. That's different. That is a distinction.
Government funding has zero distinction on First Amendment and freedom of speech. There is broad allowance when it comes to freedom of speech, which is why burning the American flag is considered free speech and you're permitted to do it. Now, as far as if anybody was arrested, I don't know the guy's name. I do believe he was a graduate student / undergrad professor who did participate in the pro-Palestinian protests, and he was summarily deported when he shouldn't have.
Okay, so he wasn't a full American citizen. Got it. So let me put it this way: where has an American citizen? Okay, even under this is where we're going to have a disagreement there with that, because, like I said, I'm pure American first at the end of the day. I believe that when you are in the immigration process, you have much stricter guidelines to live by, and I support that. For example,
you could be here visiting, and the literal text of the Constitution is anybody within the jurisdiction of these United States. It doesn't say anybody who's a citizen of these United States. It says
the Constitution also doesn't say. The Constitution also doesn't say there's a separation of church and state, but the left sure pushes that.
Because it absolutely does. There shall be no establishment of government.
No. It does not say. Where does the Constitution specifically say, and please bring it up, there is a separation of church and state? It says that there shall be no laws passed bearing on religion, right? But it doesn't say, where does it specifically, if you want to bring up the text of the Constitution and the amendment, where it specifically says there is separation of church and state, those words specifically, separation of church and state.
So, I'm going to jump in here on this one, because I hear a lot from both sides on this issue. And excuse me, guys, but I really do have to say something here on this.
Okay, because you've been so quiet.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Congress cannot, Congress or the government, however you want to look at it, I think the wording in the Constitution specifies Congress, but cannot create essentially a state religion. I think, so while there isn't a specific prohibition of church and state, I think that it is implicit, it's implied to a certain degree. And the reason I say that is because no politician who is smart and is wanting to push their little Christo-fascism or anything like that, any politician that's smart is not going to specifically call it, oh no, we're bringing religion into the government. They're not going to say that. What they're going to try to do is introduce things like, well, let's have a moment of silence. Or like in Oklahoma, let's go ahead and, provide all the kids with Bibles and stuff like that. That's where I'm saying that it's not, actually, if you want to talk about implied, the whole thing is is these Christo-fascists, is what I really am going to call them from here on out. These people, what they want to do is use, like, say, okay, well, no, we're not establishing a state religion, but we're sure as hell going to push Christianity.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. And so that's the implied, therefore that's the implied position of the
So
government. And every single person who wants to sit around and talk about, like, oh, no separation of church and
Yeah.
state, let's talk about Islam.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Islam.
Can I clarify one point before you jump on? Because I know you want to respond to me, Sasha. I do want to clarify one point when it comes to Constitution. I love the Constitution very much, very dearly, right? However, I also acknowledge that there are points to the Constitution, there are aspects to the Constitution where I wish there had been better clarification.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like for Supreme Court judges, for example, they can serve as long as they're in good standing. What the heck does that mean? It's, you know, so I want to clarify that I, you know, when it comes to the Constitution, I very much am. Here's the thing. There might be something like, for example, I will say it doesn't specifically say separation of church and state, right? Now, that's not necessarily a reflection of whether I think there should be or shouldn't be separation of church and state. I'm just saying that there is no specific wording, separation of church and state.
And what I'm saying, Kevin, is that it's implied both ways. The hardcore Christian right, if you don't want me to say Christo-fascist,
it's okay with me.
You know, no, I know, but you know, I don't throw around that word lightly.
My belief in Christ is strong enough to take on anything. Trust me, it's fine.
No, I don't throw around that word lightly, because I think that it means something, and it means a very specific thing. But I do think that we are treading into those waters now with certain Christians. I mean, I'm just certainly seeing it. I mean, hell, we're seeing it with some Jews too. And so you know, I mean, so they imply
excuse me,
they imply a certain you know, projection from the government of Christianity, and then the Constitution implies that there should be separation of church and state. So I mean, I'm just saying that both things kind of imply something, and I think that it takes rational human beings to honestly come to the conclusion to agree with me, because I'm always right. And that it is, at least, at the very least, best for us not to get religion involved in government to the degree that we are pushing any one religion. And that's why I brought up Islam, because I know that as soon as you have Islamic communities in Michigan and Texas and everything, the Christians lose their mind, and suddenly religious freedom is no big deal. They don't care about religious freedom. And you and I have talked about this, Kevin.
Oh, we have had many conversations on that.
Suddenly the conservative Christians don't care.
Yeah. We've had many conversations.
To Kevin's question, no, the Constitution doesn't state specifically the words separation of church and state. But here's where, at least I think, because I'd have to do a lot of digging and reading to see if my assumption is correct, but I'm willing to bet.
I have a Constitution over there, but it's not in my hands. But you know, yeah, I understand.
For those of us at home that are listening, the First Amendment, real quick, is Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, which we are seeing a lot, and we can go back to that, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble, which was also tried to stamp out by a similar executive order, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So that's the First Amendment. Now, where I think the originalist and textualist justices pull that separation of church and state and where they've made their determination on some major cases are. It comes from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1802, and he described the First Amendment's Establishment Clause. And it was his words that there should be a wall of separation between church and state. And this was done so that it reassured Baptists who were afraid that the government would come in and step on them, because there were a lot of people fleeing England who were just trying to have their own little sect of Christianity, whatever the flavor it is, and they weren't being allowed to have that there. Going
well,
way
and let's not forget too that, and I think that this is extremely important. Remember, America got its freedom in 1776, but it wasn't until 1789, quite a few years later, that we had a permanent constitution. And during that time, there was this gap, and coming from the colonial times,
it was like the Roaring 20s. No, I'm sorry.
Where states did have official religions. Some states certainly did. Guess what happened as soon as the First Amendment was passed? All of those official religions were canceled out and called unconstitutional. They were kicked out. They had to get rid of, and this is in 1789, they had to get rid of all religious references in school.
So I wanna expand on something, because funny enough, Sasha, that letter that you mentioned, I actually mention when I'm arguing with people that separation of church and state is not specifically referenced in the Constitution, because I actually reference that letter quite often. So it's funny that I use that letter from the opposite perspective of that when arguing that point, because at the end of the day, the Constitution, what someone wrote on the side, what a founding father wrote on the side, whoever wrote on the side, that is not in the Constitution, right? Should it have been? We can debate that. But we have to deal with what's in the Constitution itself.
Now to clarify, Kevin, one point that might actually help you out, might hurt me, I don't know. But the point that I would make, Kevin, is that with what I was talking about, what happened to the states that had official religions, it may not be specifically written in the Constitution as we would understand it, as there being a separation of church and state. But the very fact that that happened in 1789, right after the Constitution was approved, shows you that they actually did see it as a separation of church and state.
The thing is that, Chris, I will admit, so I was aware of that. I have not, and I admittedly, and this I got to actually read into more, is the specific process involved there. Because obviously when you're dealing with something like that, you're dealing with arguments and all that involved. So as I said before we started, that's something where I actually will say, I know I got to dive in more. Sasha, just like you were talking about diving in more in other aspects. Yeah. So to also understand where I'm coming from, where my mindset is, one of the things I hate more than anything when it comes to, whether it's from the left or from the right, I hate vague legislation. I really hate vague. I despise it. All right. I don't use hate easily, but I really despise vague legislation.
As a law student who sits here and reads all these old cases, I want to pull my hair out. Why can't you just say what it is that you want to say? Or what gets me more is an issue goes up to the Supreme Court and there's 3 points that need to be discussed because that's what's brought before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court doesn't want to touch on topics B and C because they're dynamite. And it could be, potential blowback. Not that it matters because unfortunately, like you said, they're there for life until they do bad behavior, whatever the heck that is.
So none of them have done bad behavior.
Right. So they'll only answer under the one prong, which leaves 2 other avenues where guess what? You're going to get some lawyer like me who's like, you know what? I really want my way. And you didn't give me an opinion in my way, but you left me 2 vague open paths. You're going to visit this again, and I'm going to force you to answer these two paths, because you have to construct your argument to make them answer these two paths. So I hate the vagueness of it. You know, I also completely disagree with the originalists and the textualists. You can't presume to guess what Thomas Jefferson had in his mind. He's dead. He's been dead a really long time. Yeah, we can look in his journal. We can look at his Bible, where he removed all the miracles that Jesus created and essentially said, Jesus was just a real good philosopher who said, do nice things if you remove these magical things that he did, right?
You're talking about the Jefferson Bible. I've read that.
I
Yeah,
absolutely
it's very
love it.
interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting.
I'm aware of the Jefferson Bible. I haven't read it, I'll admit, but I'm aware of it.
I cracked up when I read the inscription that was in it. When he died, he gave it to his niece, and he basically told his niece, throw it away if you want, because this can get you in hot water for having it. There's a reason why I didn't tell anybody that I had done this in removing these miracles and essentially turning Jesus into a nice philosopher, because it would have gotten him ostracized in that day and age. You know,
I think that there is one thing that we can do, and it is unfortunate that this. I don't know. I mean, I guess I can't get in the mind of the Supreme Court justices or anything like that. But I mean, it doesn't seem like we do this.
I can get in
Which is
Alito's mind.
Well, the thing that I'm going to talk about, we don't do the thing that I'm going to talk about, which is that we don't look at the historical context fully, and that is kind of what I'm talking about. It's like, excuse me, my dog decided to lose his mind. But anyway, we need to look at the greater historical context. And we don't seem to say it's like we look at the Constitution, and it seems like the Supreme Court looks at the Constitution and just goes, well, gosh, we need to really figure out what they meant by this. And there's a lot of historical evidence. And that's where I go back to the thing that I said. Kevin is correct in the sense that there is no explicit separation of church and state. There is no doubt about that. Anyone who says that there is absolutely factually incorrect. But the thing is if we look at what happened around that time and the way that it was interpreted by the people who were contemporaries of the folks who wrote the Constitution, they interpreted it a certain way. And it seems like the left and the right have divorced themselves from being able to go back and look at the greater, historical context. And because to me, a lot of the stuff that's in the Constitution really isn't a fucking mystery, guys. I mean, it's like you just look at the historical context around it, and it's like, oh yeah, that's probably what they meant.
So now that we've gone into a great discussion that, honestly, to fully do it justice, excuse me, we do need to give it its own hour. Somehow we got to Jesus and Alito and Jefferson. Talking about kids and how that's going to benefit from the term. So now that we're moving back, one of the other things that has, flown across news desks and into our faces since we found out that Maduro was kidnapped, whatever you want to call it, the claims by Trump that Rubio is going to run Venezuela. How does essentially politically colonizing Venezuela and putting ourselves in a situation for another unending war where we have to send our soldiers to go sit in Venezuela and do their tours there, how is that beneficial to America and Americans?
Well, okay. So Kevin talked about some of the stuff about like the benefit to America. Okay, let's be honest. Yeah, this is probably beneficial to America in an overall financial sense.
theoretically,
Well,
assuming the oil
let's just
barons
say,
are not going to gobble the profit and it is going to be used for the betterment of Americans, because
oh,
I
yes,
highly
Sasha,
doubt it.
and we know that that's not going to happen.
No, the only way it would happen is if Bezos' ex-wife gets a hold of the money and the philanthropist that she is starts throwing it out of airplanes so that Americans can actually snatch the dollars.
I don't know. I think you'd have a lot of people stabbing each other, so I don't know if that'd benefit either. But
No, but we know that the average American is not going to benefit from any of this whatsoever. It's good for America in an overall sense, but it's not good for the average American. In fact,
But
the average American is
how?
probably not going. Well, I'm just saying it's good for America overall as far as our fucking
Our,
GDP is concerned.
our social structure
But here's
sucks.
the thing, Sasha, don't misunderstand me. I don't give a fuck about that stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. The thing is like, yeah, America as a country is going to benefit. The wealthiest are going to benefit, and that's all who's going to benefit. Period. That's why this shit is done. And that's why they always like to try to put a humanitarian spin on it. I love seeing all these MAGA people out there going on about, like, oh, but 20,000 Venezuelans were murdered and blah, 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 blah.
They don't give
I'm
a
like,
crap
yeah,
about
that's
Venezuela.
terrible. That's horrible. If that happened, that's horrible. I guess we need to put China on the list next. Let's go attack China because they've done even worse.
Here's
Chris, don't get me flustered now. No,
here are my major concerns that I don't think are left sensationalized. I don't think that it's, the lesbian leftist, running around like Chicken Little here. I can see it being a legitimate concern if our administration can share the one brain cell that they have and let it come into realization, right? We have taken a country that isn't ours. Our president has already said we're going to stay there. So we've essentially colonized Venezuela, right? For all intents and purposes. But we are also in the middle of this horrific mass deportation that in itself is illegal. Okay. Now we have a place where we can send all of these people because it's a colonized America. So technically, it's not to a place that they didn't originate from. We're going to use Venezuela as a jail. We're going to overpopulate Venezuela. They're not going to have the resources that they need to be able to manage what's going on, right? Instead, this is the new Australia. Now we have ostracized our allies. So what did we just do? We opened up our left flank to Russia for them to come in and do what they want, or the right flank to China for them to come in and do what they want. This superpowers and everybody's position as a superpower changes. Everything's got to adjust. And we just opened ourselves up. We have no allies now. If Russia or China or some other country wants to come and attack us, and that's not beneficial to Americans.
all right. I actually don't believe that. I actually, well, first of all, given the strength of our military, I'm not particularly worried about that because I think that would be a fun day. But more so, I guess my biggest concern with what you just mentioned is the fact that that makes my shirt that reads Alligator Alcatraz less valuable now. But it's so, I mean, when it comes to the end of the day, so let me put it this way, and this is where it's going to be historically looking. So I don't look. The left looks at it, I feel like the left in general, and like I said, this is all about generalization. They look at a behavior and they love to apply it to America as a bad thing, when historically that's been what shaped the entire world around us, regardless of the race of the people, regardless of that, whether it's from slavery to colonization. Many nations, especially in the Middle East, have colonized for thousands of years, well before America was even founded. Now, am I inherently against colonization? Not specifically, no. I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't have the freedoms I do if colonization wasn't a thing. I'm thankful for it in that regard. So I'm not inherently...
Kevin, by the way, I'm going to cut you off for a second. And
Yeah.
The reason why I'm going to cut you off, I'm kind of tired of you taking my political points that I also would make and saying them before I get a chance to say them, because I'm not necessarily against colonization.
So,
It just needs to be done a certain way.
Exactly.
but here's the problem with colonization, right? Way back when Europe and the UK and all that, everybody was colonizing everybody else. And I hate to say it because it's not true, but in the Western view is where I'm talking from, right? So from an English view, when England was colonizing everybody, they were coming in and taking over these lands that were not sovereign, right? They didn't recognize it. At this point in time, there is no longer a land that is considered not sovereign, right?
Well,
Except for the Palestine and Gaza argument. I am very pro Gaza, so yes, that whole area is sovereign. But Venezuela is a sovereign nation. You cannot go in and occupy a sovereign nation, because us doing that is what Russia's doing to Ukraine. It's these wars that Trump has claimed that he stopped, that he never stopped.
well, no, it's your colonization. I see a removal of an illegitimate leader. So it's a matter of, which I personally have. Sorry. That's Chris. Sorry.
No, you're bringing up, Kevin, you're bringing up a really good point there about the fact. And okay, so here's the thing. Here is my frustration with right now. Is that everybody's talking about this like this is some sort of fucking humanitarian thing.
I'll get on it.
Not necessarily you, Kevin, but you did allude to it, like that we deposed illegitimate leader. Okay, fine. I'll agree with you on that. The guy was a dick. He treated his country horribly. I'm not sad that he's gone, but at the same time, I am a libertarian. I believe in America first. And I think that being America first means keeping our asses out of foreign entanglements as much as possible. This sort of situation, let's not deny it, is all about the oil, has nothing to do with humanitarian efforts. And I'm just like disgusted seeing these MAGA people coming at me on X now because I came out against their Lord and Savior Trump. And anyway, they're talking about all this humanitarian stuff. I'm like, are you fucking people for real? Have you not heard this shit back when George W. Bush did it in Iraq? Do you not remember the Iraq War in the 1990s? Do you not remember Vietnam when we were going in for humanitarian reasons? Do you not remember Korea when we were going in for humanitarian reasons? I'm sorry, I don't buy this humanitarian bullshit.
Which I would also argue that looking back, and like I said, I'd have to look back into more of the details. It's been a while. All that was winnable, but we were just pussies about it. We could have absolutely annihilated. But still, I get your point. I get what your ultimate point is. It's just at the end of the day, how I look at those situations is a lot of politicians, many actually conservative, actually on the right, just didn't have the balls to follow through the way they should. Now, so for me, I want to talk about that, where I'm not looking at this as a goal of it was about getting rid of an illegitimate leader. I'm not. That's just a happy side effect. So that's how I look at it. And it's similar, for example, like the post I am finding the most amusing, though, is where I have seen people who are more on the left posting, we stand against this, we stand with Maduro, we stand with Venezuela, and Venezuelans actually commenting on those posts, no, we're celebrating this. That's as far as my amusement with that goes. I'm not even, the only time I make that as an argument is, for example, I brought it up in regards to this sovereign nation that's voted in its leadership and all this, and we're horrible for going in and impacting that. I don't think we are.
Of sovereign nation. It's not.
Well, no.
It is not the definition of sovereign nation. So by your guys' logic, right? Let's go attack North Korea. Why not?
By our logic, no, please do not include me in that. I was not saying that.
It's the right. By that logic, let's go attack them. For me, it's...
I don't know why we didn't take them out a long time ago, but go on.
I have an issue with this attack, first and foremost, because it is illegal. And using Trump's argument, you have now made yourself a dictator. You've acted outside the balance of powers that we have established in this country. So Putin, come and get him. Come and get him.
I mean, the left has
Because now he's a dictator. Come and get him.
Well,
let me say, by the way, I know you said that before the stream, and I absolutely would encourage that because I would find that entertaining.
One thing that I have to insert here, Sasha, though, I mean, Barack Obama had no problem continuing on the Afghan.
I was actually about to get that. We have a long line of Democrats that have no problem influencing other nations.
The problem is,
but if we go back to my main point of contention with all of this, right? When Barack Obama did it, he had statute that gave him authority to do so.
Sasha, can I ask you?
He shouldn't have had that authority.
So Sasha,
that all came.
So Sasha,
September, that came from September 11th, 2001, the War Powers Authority that was given to the president, where Congress abdicated its responsibility to the president. I also did not support that back then, and I still do not support that now. But Barack Obama, I mean, if he was a man of principle, he wouldn't have taken advantage of that. He would have gone to Congress and said, "Hey, if you want me to continue this, you would have
I won't
actually extend.
I won't sanction action just because of party. If Kamala Harris had been president and she had attacked Venezuela, I would be just as pissed about it.
So here's the thing: is first of all, I mean, I know this is where it's the splitting of hairs, but I always love the splitting of hairs because
split them.
I love splitting those hairs. Was it so much an attack, or like I said, the removal of illegitimate? When I view the idea of attack of a nation, when you look at Putin going into Ukraine, that is full-heartedly the attack on the entire people of a nation, right? Just going right across it, killing and stuff like that. That's not way. We had actually an impressive operation go on there where it was in and out pretty much, and the removal of someone we wanted, of course. So that's it. But I want to, because Sasha, you have a background in law. So this is actually where I do want to ask you a question in the sincerest way, because I've been Googling this all day. I know, just because I was curious, because I have not delved into this, and I'll be honest, like I was earlier. Since I've been with family, I have not delved into this as much as I plan to. So what I was looking up is specifically where what Trump did was a violation of the law as it stands today, and also is it actually unconstitutional, like truly unconstitutional. Now, from what I have found, even from the most a lot of left-leaning sources, I haven't found anyone where they could point to this unequivocally makes this action illegal, arrest-worthy, because you're looking back at, what was it, in 1990, where we went into Panama and extracted, right? Sorry, I'm trying to remember the name off the top of my head.
Manuel Noriega.
Yes. So we're looking at that. So we're looking at a precedent at the end of the day. And in the Constitution, where exactly is this specific action unconstitutional? Now, you can say that it's not supported by the Constitution, but that's a different argument than it's unconstitutional. Again, I love splitting hairs. So I guess then, Sasha, to reiterate, what my question to you is, and because I really would love to research this, is what law specifically was violated, and what specific, where in the Constitution, where was the Constitution violated specifically?
So if we go back to the very basics, and here's to hoping I do my con law professor proud, but if we go back to the very basics, right? The power that the executive has is to enact the laws that are created by the legislative, right? That's it. That's his power.
Okay. And the legislative have given too much power to the executive, if you ask me. So I think that's where that gets murky. But sorry,
especially now they've sat on their thumbs. Now, where it's created, it's really ugly in the creation in the Constitution, because the Constitution does say that he's the head of the military. right? So if you're if you're commander in chief, sure, you're commanding them, right? You're supposed to be the top person, but he doesn't have a war power aside from what was created in response to 9/11. So
Yes.
in that action, if the US is attacked, now the president has statutory authority to react for a 2-year period. Trump has scrambled in the last 4 months since the bombing of these drug boats, right? He's tried saying that fentanyl is a weapon of mass destruction. It doesn't fit the definition. And we know that fentanyl comes from China, not Venezuela. He tried to say that drugs were an assault on our country and that should designate Venezuela as a terrorist state, right? Not the definition
Again,
of a terrorist state, right?
Again, China, though.
Again,
let's look at
China would be the terrorist
But
state.
I agree with both China and Venezuela having that designation, by the way.
Trump's a chicken shit. Trump is a chicken shit. If he wanted to go and attack because of a weapon of mass destruction that is fentanyl, go attack Xi. He's your dad.
I was finishing a point. So.
I was finishing the point because Kevin had use my law student know-how where I'm at right now.
Right.
So there's the two routes, right? Congress declares a war, and then the president can go and do what a commander-in-chief does, and la-di-da, everybody goes to war. There is no unilateral choice in making a military action like this outside of Venezuela came and shot up some people in Florida. Then Trump could be like, okay, let's go. But that didn't happen. And that's what makes this illegal and unconstitutional.
So can I follow up with a question on that, Sasha, quick? Because I wanted to ask then, what would you argue about the legality of George H.W. Bush and in regards to, removing, it's narrow, right? Noriega, is that it?
Noriega?
Who, what?
Noriega. I'm going to butcher that. Noriega. I'm horrible at names. All right.
That was George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, George H.W. Bush is what I said. And, funny enough, wasn't that 36 years to the day, actually? Is that true? I thought I read that was 36 years to the day.
I'm going to tell you, outside of me being able to go and really research that, if that was 36 years ago, that I was 8 years old.
Yeah, it was 1990 when the actual extraction took place.
I was 8 years old. So
all of you young,
I would have to
be almost 50 years old.
I was in 1990, I was 5, so
yeah. Oh, no. Now, I will say
in 1977.
I was at least born in 1991. Now, I will say when Bush 1 did that, if Congress said go ahead and do it, right? Or he was working under some other statute that I'm unaware of, it was legal. So then you have to look at it from the is that possible?
Well, from what I understand, he didn't go through, at least from what I understand, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. Like I said, this is stuff I'm delving into more, right? From what I understand, this wasn't with Congress's approval, that it didn't get the stamp. It went through courts.
Actually didn't even know that it was going on.
Exactly. So then it went through the courts. Courts said, okay, because I believe what he did was he then said that he had diplomat immunity, right? And the court said no. And that's where we expect that here's what we're going to see with Maduro is he's going to say that he has immunity. And if that follows the precedent that we have here, then the court is going to be like, no, that doesn't apply. So I wasn't even referring to, how things changed following 9/11. I was going back to 1990 in regards to legal precedent, because I'm curious, since we have that precedent, where did then Trump violate the precedent, violate the law, the standard that was put in place?
Okay, so I do have an explanation for that. Okay, so here's the thing, And it's not just Trump. I'm not all over Trump's ass for this stuff. This isn't like some big anti-Trump thing. And God knows I wouldn't want to be all over his ass anyway. But get too much orange on me. But
more like brown, but go ahead.
Yeah, that too. But this isn't just against Trump. This is a simple fact that presidents since Trump, so I am talking Obama, I am talking George W. Bush, I am talking Bill Clinton, I am talking George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter and Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford and Lyndon Johnson and Dwight Eisenhower, and John F. Kennedy, and Dwight Eisenhower, and Harry Truman. That's how far back I can name my presidents. And I'll tell you what, every single one of them have broken the Constitution.
Absolutely. And they should have been called to task for it.
Yes, every single one of them have. And here's the problem, Kevin. The Constitution itself specifically says that only Congress has the authority to declare war. And again, it's another one of those things. It's like, it's not specific, but my God, you'd have to be dense as fuck to not understand that they also mean you can't go out and take your military work.
But Chris,
and do
it's in that area where you have the most fun. It's in that area where you have the most fun. Because
the billionaires have a lot of fun.
did anyone stand up and say, we declare war?
Let me finish what I'm
Sorry.
Let me finish what I'm saying here. So the thing is that Congress has the absolute authority to declare war. And like I said, you'd have to be dense as fuck not to understand that that also means any military action. That's obviously what they meant by it. But the thing is presidents throughout the decades have totally broken that constitutional law, and Congress has abdicated their authority to the executive, which is also unconstitutional, which means the very fact that the War Powers Act exists is unconstitutional. That law should be revoked. If people want the president, and I've said this on many other issues too, if the people, and because this is a very conservative standpoint, if the people want the president to be able to act unilaterally on military decisions, then you need to pass a fucking constitutional amendment. I don't want to hear anything else.
So I had to Google quick because that is a question, Kevin, that will keep me up all night if I don't at least find some sort of answer. Going to Bush and what authority he claimed he had to go to Panama and get Noriega, right? Google is giving, oh shit. Am I here?
You broke up a little bit, but you're here.
Okay. So going to Google real quick, they're giving me a couple of reasons that Bush gave, right? The only one that seems to hold any kind of constitutional water would be he claims that going and getting Noriega was protecting the integrity of the Panama Canal Treaty because Noriega had annulled election results that year, right? So the treaty was at risk. Treaty powers are given to the executive, right? He can make these treaties and these agreements with other countries. They do hold weight of law and they do stand to the Constitution as long as they are ratified by Congress. Okay. So it's shaky. It's holding water the way a bounty paper towel would hold water. Okay. Very shortly, not very well. Right. So then I had to look real quick and see, like, shoot, what kind of treaties do we have that would be similar so that Trump's lawyers could now have this analytical argument to the courts. Right. And without going fully into them, We have broken those treaties. There's a maritime boundary treaty of 1978 that establishes the maritime boundary between the US and Venezuela in the Caribbean Sea. We violated it. We went and did an embargo. We broke that treaty. They would be justified to come after us in an international court. There's a drug interdiction agreement in 1991 that says the US and Venezuelan authorities can board vessels suspected of drug trafficking in international waters. We broke it. We never checked those vessels. We just bombed. We never followed our own treaty. And then there's a few commercial treaties that talk about trade and an extradition treaty. So maybe he can try and say that, y'all never extradited Maduro like you should have. But Maduro didn't have a warrant, only an indictment. And an indictment doesn't give any police power to go into any home in the US to grab someone. Ergo, it definitely doesn't give you power to storm a sovereign country and to take their president. So they're going to try those analytical arguments and they're going to fall flat. Will the courts hear this? Maybe, maybe not, depending on which court they take it to, because it could be deemed a political question and the courts can refuse to hear something that's a political question.
Sorry.
Okay, based on precedent and what other presidents have done in the past, I wouldn't be surprised if the Supreme Court wusses out on this and says, it's a political question. If you guys don't like it, stop voting for people like him.
Which actually that goes into a whole nother conversation that I have about, it's not so much blaming the politicians, it's, let's face it, it's blaming how the voters have been, including myself, by the way. I don't discount myself there. I'm not saying I'm perfect, when I look at my own voting history and stuff. I think any politician who has been honest and said, I can't give you your cake and let you eat it too, we just refuse to vote for, whether they're on the left or the right. So I think we've created the very politicians that we say that we hate so much. But that's a whole other conversation.
I totally agree with you, Kevin. Totally agree with you.
Since we're not looking to all gleefully agree through this whole thing, I have to say, so for me, here's the thing. That is actually, Sasha, where, as I was going to, and why I asked you that question, I am curious to see how this plays through the courts, because I really am, because politicians in general, regardless of party, and presidents in general, as Chris said, so many violated the Constitution, but they're also really good at stretching things. And also another thing at testing things out, like, let's face it, student loan forgiveness under Biden and what he tried to do with the powers of OSHA, even Biden himself was like, just threw that at the wall to see if it would stick when it came to the Constitution. There is a long history here. I am curious to see how that plays out, but honestly, I'm less this is where it's gonna be. So a few of the people I've been following on social media, political commentators, are actually soldiers. They're veterans, right? Mm-hmm. A number of them are veterans, and they have served, of varying ages, and they've served in different wars, and they've served in wars that ultimately were fruitless and pointless, right? And so even Trump supporting veterans, right? I'm looking at the questions that they're asking is, well, what exactly does this mean that we're going to guide, we're going to be there? How does that play out? And that is actually where I am more concerned, and I will admit, listening a bit closely and stuff. The courts they're gonna process this, go through it. Are they gonna do what you said and wuss out? I mean, let's face it. I feel like the courts have become so politically biased that it really depends as to which way at the end of the day, as it goes. But when it comes to the Supreme Court, I will say this though, that's interesting with the Supreme Court. And if you want to argue me on this, you can. You do actually see that conservative Supreme Court justices have historically moved more towards the middle, where those on the left, more liberal, actually tend to remain pretty staunchly where they are, and rarely move more towards that middle ground. At least what I've observed and what I've read
No,
up on.
I think I think that's actually a fair
I will
analysis.
say, and these will be our closing thoughts because we are at our mark, but I will say that Gor Gorsuch, I still don't know how to
Gorsuch.
say his name.
See, I
I
put
mean,
your name, so I'm with you, girl. I'm
as
with
a
you.
as a law student, I should probably learn to say
No,
it.
actually, right. You got that. You got that weight on your shoulder, girl. You better know that.
I forget that he exists half the time because he is so quiet. I forget that he exists. Um, he's one that can be pulled more left of center. Um, Kavanaugh, I think people want to, step on him. He's another one that can also be like, ugh, we don't know what he's gonna do. And then Barrett, she will
My name.
right. Um, she she I feel like she's a pick me girl. Whichever way the wind is blowing is the way that she's going to go, especially over the fall and summer when she had her book coming out. Then all of a sudden she was like loud and proud. But I think that she's internally conflicted. She's a pick me. Boys probably didn't like her. She's probably got a really pretty older sister that she always got passed over for. That's just my thoughts on her. But I do agree that the conservative ones do tend to get pulled over, and the liberal ones do tend to stand their ground.
Yeah, I think I think that's very fair. Now, just before we go, I mean, I've got to give it to Kevin because, he didn't go so much into the humanitarian thing about Venezuela. That is something that has
Yeah.
been irritating me
I
about
do
media.
I do want to talk about that next week, or if we can manage to get together and do a midterm, because their humanitarian cries are so the hypocrisy is dripping
Well,
and oozing off of that.
it's
It makes
hard
me want
not
to
to see.
vomit.
It's hard not to see Iraq War 2.0
Hmm.
here. We're going to be
Mm,
greeted as liberators, as Dick Cheney said. And it's like, yes, there's some celebrations in the streets right now. Just wait until guerrilla warfare takes
Yeah.
over and no one's going to be fucking celebrating.
And then
You
Americans are
know?
pissed because we're stuck in another 20-year freaking war.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
And
served I served my time. I did my 8 years. Now my son is in. Is he going to go to Venezuela? If this is a 20-year war, probably. And if it was a
yeah.
war that had value, sure, kid, go. Do your country proud. I will be scared, but go. Do your country proud. This is not a war that holds any value. He's not
And
going
I
to get
think
benefits from that oil.
I just think that it's so funny that I've been called recently so anti-conservative and everything, but I am taking a very strongly conservative standpoint on this. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you go back and read all of the great works on conservative philosophy and stuff like that. It's absolutely anti-interventionist.
Hmm.
It is about keeping peace. It's about doing what's best for your country, doing what's best for the population, that sort of thing. Which is why I can't help but support conservatism, because I think that ultimately, if we do practice it the way that it's supposed to be practiced in this country, then I think that we'll actually be happy. It's the social conservatives, it's the religious conservatives that kind of give conservatism the bad name. But those of us who are like me and even Kevin, because I mean the thing is Kevin may be a religious conservative. I mean, he's someone you can talk to. So many of them aren't. I mean, I've had people say all sorts of shit to my face when I was running for office and everything. And, I just, the stuff about being gay and everything, it's like, well, I don't understand your lifestyle. And it's like, oh my God, this is not a fucking lifestyle. I'm not a cabaret singer, you goddamn idiot. And, it's like, I've just grown tired of that aspect of conservatism. So yes, you will see me lash out at the religious conservatives, except Kevin, because I know him and I love him. And, you will see me lash out at the social conservatives, even though I embrace some aspects of the social conservatism. But the thing is like, I do think you can take it too fucking far, and I think that I just really wish that people could do what we're doing on this podcast, have open conversations, get to know the other people on the other side, sit there and talk and have a good conversation about why we disagree. We might not change each other's minds, but this is some powerful shit that we're doing here, and we need more of it.
I do have to clarify for our viewers that there was a point where I think you stopped because you had to go and silence the dog or something. But Kevin and I did have to have the sidebar of, hey, I'm not being aggressive. I just get like really into the conversation and really passionate. And we were both like, yeah, no, I'm not being aggressive. I don't think you're being aggressive either.
Sasha and I would absolutely go and grab a drink together, folks. It's just like we're full, and we'd be very loud in the bar and drive people nuts because we just talk.
And I think that's what's lost on both sides of the aisle, that there are people that get very passionate and very into the topic, and the other side takes an offense to it. And this is to both sides, right? They take an offense to the conversation. Before we started recording, Chris had used the C word and was like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to say that if that offends you, and we do need more of that give and take on both sides. This is people's passion topics, things that they find so important, and there, you just have to have that clarity on both sides that, hey, right now I'm super passionate and animated in this discussion. I'm not mad at you. I'm not saying any bad thing to you, and make that clear in the discussion. So, Kevin, any last thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm going to try to quickly rant this because as a New Yorker, speak a little bit faster. But so I want to clarify just a couple things because earlier, and this is a quick clarification that we can then cover in a future stream because I'd love to come back. Yes. When you asked me about how it benefits America, and I referenced about the oil if done correctly, because obviously the devil is always in the details, no matter where we're coming from here. And when you brought up specifically the starving children, in regards to that, I actually see that as two different problems with two different solutions. I am a family unit. I'm pro-family unit. I believe that really the answer to that issue lies in resolving the issues of the, falling apart, the degradation of the family unit, and the idea of community. So that's actually where I see more the answer to that. When I look at Venezuela, when I look at the oil, to me, resources, that's enough to benefit America. Now, again, the devil's doing the detail on where that goes exactly, because, how it trickles down, where it trickles down, of course. So I did want to clarify that because I didn't want to leave this idea of like I was stumped. It was no, I separate those two things and I see different solutions, right? I also just want to say quickly in regards, because we got a little bit on separation of church and state. And maybe I'm giving away a bit too much here, but what amuses me the most when people on the left come at the topic, and Chris knows where I'm going with this, is they talk about the Constitution and separation of church and state. Now, the irony is they should actually be referencing the Bible, since Jesus himself, and I always switch these two around, said that give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God, which is basically a statement of separating the world of man and the world of God in certain regards, especially politically speaking. So I really find the irony to me is when so many people on the left argue for separation of church and state in reference Constitution, Constitution, Constitution. I'm like, you could just reference the Bible. Anyways,
I think, Kevin, you give many Christians in this country way too much credit in assuming that they have read the Bible themselves instead of just listen to what Pastor Bob says, right?
Well, Kevin knows this about me. It's like I may be Jewish, but I knew the New Testament backwards and forwards.
So I would love to have a religion debate with you guys too, because I think that would be fun. As I am an atheist, I think that would be a lot of fun. And what do an atheist, a Christian, and a Jew have in common when they're all on totally opposite political sides?
I feel like we would need to do that stream in a bar though, because it would complete the joke.
Yes. All right, guys.
I've only had a couple of these, but I'll tell you why. We need about like 7 or 8 of them each. Yeah. And then let's have that conversation.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening to us this week. Kevin, thank you so much for filling in for Sander. I think I am speaking for everybody when I say this. We will absolutely love to have you anytime that you want to jump in with us. It's all right by me. I love conversation with you. Thank you, Chris, for inviting Kevin. So
yes,
have a good night.
Absolutely.
Have a good night, everybody. This is Political Malpractice.
Bye-bye.
If you want a second opinion or just something to rage about, hit that button and subscribe. This has been Political Malpractice.